All right, Tom, we're live. It's what the little sign said. Welcome to our show.
Thank you very much. Great to be here.
Well, Tom, as I mentioned before, we had left out your title, but you are a benefits advisor at Aflac, and so
Right.
today we're going to talk about cancer care, cancer benefits, etc. that Aflac offers. So why don't you just take a few moments to introduce yourself and tell us how long you've been with Aflac and exactly what you do there.
Okay. Well, my background has been in various types of reward and engagement programs with employees. I actually worked with Travelers Insurance for a number of years, and understanding their insurance products. I joined Aflac 2 years ago, getting into something that I wanted to just make more of a difference in people's personal lives. And in particular, their cancer story was a very compelling story. So I've been there with them for 2 years as a benefits advisor. I'm out in the field, introducing Aflac, explaining what it is, and supplemental insurance generally, because a lot of people don't quite understand how it works and where the benefits can really be quite substantial.
Someone may think of Aflac. What does Aflac has to do with cancer? And you and I have been connected, I don't know, maybe 3-4 years now on LinkedIn. And we're always going back and forth in DMs. And when you saw that I had switch roles and was now working in the cancer space, we had another conversation. And you gave me some background on some of the benefits that Aflac offers to cancer patients, especially you know benefits that are very affordable. And
Right.
then you told me the story, which I want you to share with our audience, as to the founder of Aflac. How did he get started? What was his tie into cancer?
Well, back in around 1955, the Amos brothers, one of the family members, got diagnosed with cancer and went through, obviously all the treatment, and they realized very quickly that it's a tremendously expensive venture to go through that. Even if you have insurance, it's still very expensive. And they realized, in particular, there's a lot of things that insurance just simply doesn't cover at all. That's just the nature of health insurance in many ways. So they said we really need to do something about that. And that's really what inspired the development of Aflac as a company, to just really address the financial burden of cancer in particular. So in 1958 is when they started their first actual cancer policy. It takes a while to develop policies and be able to get them approved. So that went on for a number of years. And in 1995, they began a philanthropic effort for the treatment of childhood cancers. And they started off with a pledge of $3 million to get that kicked off. And since then till now, they've donated $140 million to cancer research, children's cancer research in particular. People may not know that kind of history behind why we're so passionate about cancer. Actually, a large part of our business is also in Japan.
Mm.
And in 1999, the Children's Cancer Association of Japan, they partnered with them to create the first Parents House. Because in particular, childhood cancer, the parents need to be there.
Right.
That's probably as much medicine as anything they're doing in the hospital, having the parents close by. So right now we have the Aflac Cancer and Blood Disorder Center in Atlanta. It's the seventh most largest cancer center for children's cancer in the country, treating almost 9,000 children a year for cancer and blood disorders. And so it's really a deep and abiding passion on the part of the family, and the Amos family, to really focus on this as something they've lived it. They know how important it is to fill those financial gaps.
And we're so thankful. We're sorry that had happened, but we're so thankful that it spawned Aflac and it spawned this tremendous, commitment to cancer and, of course, to childhood cancer as well. But to cancer on a whole, because the
Right.
benefits that you guys offer is obviously not just for the child coverage, but it's for all adults. So tell us how that works, because how do you qualify for those cancer benefits? And we talked about this a little bit before. We know that it's not after you get cancer you're going to get the benefits, because no insurance company really does that. So tell us how does one qualify for these benefits, and when is the right time?
Well, obviously, the best time is before you've ever had any kind of a cancer. That is always the best. And what we're trying to, part of the reason why we set it up this way to be as aggressive and generous as we can is we know that roughly half the country doesn't have an extra $1,000 to spend on unexpected expenses. So we're trying to make this a significant benefit that fills a lot of those gaps. But the idea is that you have the opportunity to, as a guaranteed issue product, and supplemental insurance generally works this way, that you now have money coming that goes directly to the individual that you can use for any purpose you want whatsoever, regardless of whether your insurance is covering a particular treatment or aspect or not, because it's those unexpected things that really hurt. It's what people don't think about. The title of the show is The Unforeseen Expenses. Travel and hotel to get to the right cancer treatment location and get to the doctors, second opinions, et cetera. Time off from work. You don't know, how much you're going to have. And a lot of people that are facing this that have the difficulty are in hourly jobs, and you're not getting paid for those hours. Food, sometimes you're going to be very, very tired and in the back and forth, and you're just not going to feel like cooking. Any home modifications, things like that. So for us, we just need to sit with the individuals, usually through companies, and we just make sure as long as you are cancer treatment free for 5 years, then you qualify. It's really that simple. And we want to make that a very simple process. Yes, we do take down some basic information, but we want to make it as available as possible. So that's the simple way of how we get started.
There's a question there which I think you just answered. Peter says, "Thank you for sharing your work on T-Talks. What costs of cancer care do you think are most often underestimated?" And like you just said, it's the it's the transportation cost, it's the time off from work cost, it's food because I don't feel well enough to cook. It's all these things that really hurt people who are living at or below the federal poverty guidelines, because they just don't have that extra to spare. They can hardly pay for their treatment, and usually they struggle there. But even if they have insurance to cover that through their jobs, they don't have the extra cash left over to cover these things. Now, you said as long as you're cancer treatment free for 5 years, you can qualify. Does treatment free means that you're not taking any, let's say, any tamoxifen, any kinds of pill, or does it mean that you're not in chemotherapy? I don't know if you know that granular, but what does treatment free looks like? Does it mean like you're off all pills or?
No, what you just mentioned, if there are some that if you've been off them for a year, then that counts as cancer treatment free. But chemotherapy, radiation, those would be more substantial treatments.
Understood right. And agreed. Understood and agreed. Also, so that's what you covered. So let me ask you another question. With the underrepresented groups, people who are struggling, how affordable really is your? You don't have to give quotes, but how affordable is your program?
Well, this is what really surprises people, because one of the things that I would say, just to clarify one point, is to get a cancer supplemental policy, you do need to have some kind of health care, because we don't want people to misunderstand. Yeah. We are not the one paying for that major surgery, but we are paying you money if you have surgery, because there's going to be associated deductibles, copays, et cetera, that go along with that. So I wanted to just kind of to clarify that. But as far as how the way that I think it's important to understand kind of how does this add up. So, for example, if you have an initial diagnosis, we're already sending you a $4,000 check.
Okay, so for initial diagnosis, for your cancer benefit, you get it diagnosed, you're getting a check for $4,000. Right.
If it's an initial cancer, because as we said before, you can be cancer treatment free.
Yes.
If you had cancer earlier in your life, you wouldn't get that initial benefit. If you've never had cancer, all the more reason why to do this younger, because you don't want to wait too long for that. Then you get the $4,000. If you have a child, children are free on our policy. Doesn't matter how many. They'll get an $8,000 benefit right away, because right away there's expenses you're incurring right away, going back and forth to hospitals, et cetera.
So excuse me, Tom. So you're saying if children are on the policy, why is it $8,000?
They're getting double, because The child isn't going to drive themselves to the hospital.
Gotcha.
The parent is really going to have to do all that work. So it's more expensive because you automatically have to have two people involved in this process, maybe three.
So
So
if your child gets cancer, it's an $8,000 cash outlay because
correct.
of the parental. Okay.
Correct. Right.
That's
But
good.
I think just I hope this is okay. I wanted to kind of show that, and this is supplemental in general, how it's going to follow you through the whole process. So you have the initial diagnosis, and then you have the initial treatments. And the way that these policies are set up, often there's no lifetime max. So this is how it really can substantially add up. So for example, injected chemotherapy, $600 a day, no lifetime max. Oral chemotherapy, $250 a day, up to $750 a month. Radiation, $350 a day, no lifetime max. Surgical anesthesia, up to $4,000, daily benefit, no lifetime max. Surgical prosthesis, $2,000. Reconstructive surgery, $2,000 per operation, no lifetime max. So that's now you're getting treatment. Then there's the hospitalization, $200 a day, no lifetime max. The travel, we reimburse you for travel. Lodging, you're getting a daily lodging benefit up to 90 days per year. And then continuing care, hospice, et cetera. So the way that we are looking at it, the way Aflac looks at it, and other supplemental companies look at it, is from initial diagnosis to those initial treatments to ongoing treatment to long-term care. And we're going to be right there with you until you get better or otherwise. We want to be right with you the entire journey. So, just to give you an idea of how this can really add up, depending on what your needs are, we had an Aflac rep join the company. They immediately got a policy for their family, cancer, hospital, accident, and their spouse, unfortunately, 35 days later, was diagnosed with leukemia. Well, over the next year, they got a total of over $80,000 in benefits. It allowed them to keep the house, keep the car, keep the insurance payments going. It was life-changing. It was absolutely life-changing for them. And because there's all these other expenses, home modifications, all these other bills that insurance simply doesn't cover. And that's where our fit is in those unexpected expenses that can really be very devastating. Again, as we said, the stats are more than half Americans don't have an extra $1,000 to pay an unexpected bill. And that's more challenging in the more financially strained communities and people of color in particular. So that's where the Aflac world and our commitments is to work towards that. We have Deanne Sanders, who's a great ambassador for our Close the Gap program to address that specific issue of helping those communities that are in higher need with financial resources. Because you want to focus on getting better. You don't want to focus on the bills.
Paying bills.
Getting better, yeah.
That's right. We have a few questions coming in, Tom, so I want to get to them. So Sammy asks, how does coverage impact individuals who carry a genetic mutation? In other words, would they qualify for the coverage if they had a genetic mutation?
No, only if something is manifest and an actual illness. We don't, as of today, that is not considered a disqualifying event. You may have cancer in your family. We would say, absolutely, let's get you on a policy immediately. If you haven't had cancer or you're treatment free, let's get you on a policy right away, and let's make sure you're covered.
I have a few more because you and I talked about that. I asked if there's cancer in the family, but you don't have it, would that disqualify? And you had said no. So that I think is the same.
And I did want to adjust your question. I'm sorry, I jumped over it. The costs are a lot less than people would think. It's anywhere from $8 to maybe $13 a week for $13 for a family policy. Again, it adjusts based on which state, ages, but that's a rough number to use. So I just wanted to address that question directly.
Yeah, you're again. I want to repeat that for you. Depending on which state, up to as low as $13 a week for a family. And I think I shared with you, Tom, that I actually had offered Aflac, and at a company I worked with, I had before a nonprofit, and the folks loved it. But like you said, and people have to remember, it's supplemental, so it's not going to cover your hospital stay. It's not going to cover your surgery. It's supplemental insurance in addition to your regular coverage. But I can attest that the folks who did purchase an Aflac benefit, it was just something that they felt like was an insurance for them, and it was primarily single moms who were buying it. Peter says, are these benefits available only through an employer, or can people purchase coverage on their own?
You can purchase coverage on your own, and again, this gets back to the quirks of our national insurance system. Each state is going to have different rules as far as what is available to buy directly within that state. So there isn't one answer. It happens to be in New York State where I am. Yes, you can buy a cancer, accident, and dental. You can buy directly from Aflac. But again, there are other supplemental providers out there, so you may want to shop around if cancer is not available in your state. Definitely look and see if the other providers may be available in your state.
So Aflac is saying that it depends on the state rules. So
Correct.
If you're interested, find an Aflac person, agent, benefits specialist, and in your area and ask that question. But I do believe it's available in Florida, but check. And then Ilana says, just so she's clear, you can use the money for any expenses that you need during your treatment.
Yes, and whatever, it doesn't matter. And again, as Sue said, make sure we're very clear about this. It doesn't matter whether your insurance paid 100% of a surgery. You're still going to get that surgery benefit. Your insurance may have covered 100% of that prosthetic. You're still going to get the prosthetic benefit. So it is paid directly to you to use any way you choose, as either a automatic deposit or as a check. We pay very quickly. We want the money in your hands because we know that's going to help relieve your financial stress.
Now, is there a difference in rate if you purchase Aflac through a company plan or through an individual plan? Is there a difference? Okay.
Yeah, if you're going through a company and the company provides it, you can now get it pre-tax. So that $12 plan turns into an $8 or $9 plan, depending on your tax rate. So you're paying with pre-tax dollars, which is a significant financial benefit. So that's the way most of Aflac is purchased, but we have direct business as well.
And for the companies who may be watching, small businesses, et cetera, to sign up for an Aflac company benefit, there's no cost to the company, is there?
No, because you're doing it. It's all a pre-tax benefit, voluntary. So if, let's say you have 20 employees and only 5 want to participate, that's fine. It's up to them based on their family needs and their financial situation. And in fact, it helps the employer because it reduces their payroll. So there's a side benefit there. But yes, it's all on the employee, and if they choose to, and they can do any kind of mix and match they want. The only thing I would say is that we need to have 3 individuals with at least one policy to qualify as a quote unquote group. And that gives you access to all the policies available in that state.
Interesting. Okay, next question. Are these amounts related to out-of-pocket patient copays? Okay, are these amounts related to out-of-pocket patient costs, copays versus what a health system bills? Do you understand that question?
Yeah, it's basically, it doesn't matter what you've been billed. The event occurred. It's more like you went into the hospital and you had a surgery that day. We're going to pay you this $4,000 benefit because of what was done. Has nothing to do with your copays or your maximums, or none of that matters. We want to give you that money to use any way you need to. So we don't work in tandem or in cooperation with your health provider, and whatever your copays and deductibles are, we're just paying you directly as our customer, whatever that benefit amount is.
Ilana, I think Tom already answered this question. Just to reiterate, he says, can you give us an idea of cost of this insurance? Insurance is so expensive for most. And what he said was for a family, it's typically like $13 for the family. And remember, per week, and it's supplemental insurance. This is not your general insurance that covers your surgery. This is a supplemental insurance supplement to your regular insurance. You will not get this insurance. You cannot purchase Aflac if it's only that's all you have. Correct? Is that correct, Tom?
That's
right.
Correct, yeah.
So if you do not have regular insurance, this is not the insurance that you're going to qualify for. This is in addition to what you have. And as he stated, even if your insurance company covers 100% of costs, they're still gonna give you the $4,000 if you have a diagnosis to use however you want. And if it is your child, it's $8,000 because the child needs you to actually stay home and take them around.
Right.
Do most companies offer this type of insurance for their employees? That's a question for you.
Well, we have our stats on as far as supplemental as a category, regardless of whether it's us or not, it's about a third of companies in the country, as our stats see, that are offering some kind of supplemental. I think the question before was one of the reasons that they aren't is they don't understand the costs and how the benefits work. So they shy away. Oh, we don't need more insurance. We have insurance.
Mm-hmm.
That's great. That's wonderful that you have insurance. This is supplemental. This is a cash benefit, and it's very low cost considering the benefit you can get out of it. That's our job, is to get the word out. And we are not really salespeople. We're educators. We want people to understand it. It's got to make sense. It's got to be a fit. And if you see the fit, then wonderful. Then it's because it's voluntary, individual. You pick what makes sense for you. So companies should feel more at ease to say, okay, that sounds reasonable.
Sarah says, thank you for using your voice. Sarah's my other half. T-Talk. You're on Sarah's page. Thank you for using your voice and sharing this vital information. Medical bankruptcy is real, and so many people feel and fear to become a burden to their family on top of navigating being sick. This is so important. Right. And this is the reason why, we wanted to give you this platform, Tom, because when we were talking, I said to you, okay, I didn't know this existed. And unless you're in the know, you really don't know. But the problem with this particular insurance, and I shouldn't say problem, the challenge is, if you already have cancer just diagnosed, you can't go and buy this insurance. So this is really for a person who is well right now, or 5-year cancer treatment free. So you're not on chemo, you're not on radiation. But if there's cancer, for example, in your family, not that it's going to have to happen to you, but you're not higher risk. If you are, for example, a woman with dense breast, and the doctors keep telling you you're at high risk, you're having your test done twice per year, you may want to invest in this. Yes. in case something were to happen. So I think it's affordable enough for you to have that assurance that if something happens, you have some extra cash flow, because you can't always work when this is going on.
Right.
Pete said, this is great information. It seems like everyone should consider this type of supplemental coverage, and great that it can be affordable. And as we talked about, Tom, we're talking about cancer today because we're Total Health and we're the Cancer Equity Project. But Aflac has supplemental insurance for other things that's not cancer that provides very good benefits. And we're not going to talk about it on this show, but maybe we'll bring you on and talk about that, some other benefits. But for this show, I wanted to keep it to cancer. But yes. And the reason why I say that is because, as we talked about before, Tom, people don't want to talk about cancer. But you were talking to me about the stats, and so earlier, and how you guys were making your decision. So tell us about what Aflac is seeing about the stats, about people who are going to be affected, potentially be affected by this disease.
Well, as I said, you have about, and as we all know, the stats are very sobering. About 1 in 3 Americans are very likely going to be touched with cancer in their lifetime. But that actually affects about half of Americans, because it affects the whole family. It doesn't just affect the person with cancer. So what we are seeing is we're trying to greater awareness. It's even awkward when we're in a presentation. Sometimes the employer doesn't really want to talk about it. Someone just went through cancer treatment and it's a very sensitive subject, et cetera. But we kind of say, well, that's exactly why we need to talk about it. So we have to drop this hesitancy to talk about something, because the nature of it is so devastating, and make that the reason we talk about it, because we don't want your people to be concerned should this happen, and be able to focus completely on getting well and don't worry about the bills. If I can share just one small anecdote about this. I was talking to it was a customer that this gentleman that was running HR, and he had Aflac for 20 years, and he had an accident and a cancer policy. The accident is because his sons were into motocross and they were constantly getting hurt. So he said we had vacations on those poor kids, based on all the cash benefits they got. But he had thought about canceling his policy just a year ago, and I was with him just 3 weeks ago. And we're sitting there, and he was just kind of scratching his head, and he has HR bring in a piece of paper, said, nope, he's still on the cancer plan, because 6 months earlier, he got diagnosed with lung cancer. So while we're sitting there talking to him, we're checking his policy, we're checking where he is and what he's had done so far. He already had $16,000 coming to him by the end of that day.
Wow.
And suddenly
Wow.
his stress, because from where he was geographically, he had a long drive going down to Sloan Kettering, and hotel, mileage, tolls, all of that was killing him. And suddenly he had $16,000. He has a lot more money coming. But it just, you could see that stress just was relieved from him. He was very confident it could be treated, but suddenly the stress of fighting this and the financial burden was relieved tremendously. Just like, oh, that's right, I still have this. So that's just a wonderful story of seeing the difference we
It
can make in
is.
people's lives.
It is, and like you mentioned earlier, you guys have paid out up to $80,000 in cancer benefits, to one family. And again, when you think about the low cost investment, and it doesn't matter if you were on Aflac for a month or 20 years, and then the unforeseen happened,
Right.
it's the same benefit. Sammy says, great information and details to reiterate that these dollars arrive related to diagnosis, treatment, etc. Uncertainty of cost can not only improve financial toxicity, but emotional stresses related to cancer. What you were just talking about.
Right.
When you're diagnosed and you're dealing with that already, and then to think of all the other stuff you have to deal with,
Yes.
it's crazy. And the line says, such important information. If there is no cost to your employer, why wouldn't everyone offer this to their employees? This is like a short or long-term insurance, correct?
Well, one of the reasons that as anyone would know, if you're going to offer something to your employees, the employer wants to feel confident that I'm not giving them a pain in the neck, as you and I were speaking about before. I'm
Right.
giving them something they're going to be pleased with, and it's lack of education of understanding our story, and that we do pay. We want to pay you, and we pay quickly. So it's the employers who just are so hesitant and say, well, what if I bring in this benefit and then you're a nightmare to work with? Well, we're not. We're one of the best companies in the industry. We've been around the longest with the largest, and we're very aggressive about getting people their money because that's the heart and soul of our business. If we're not helping people, we're going to be out of business very quickly. So one of the hesitations is, am I bringing something forward that's a good benefit that the employer is going to be happy with? And the other is just a misunderstanding. They assume on the costs right away. Oh, my people are already spending, X dollars per month. They can't afford another couple $100. Well, you're right. And we wouldn't want to charge you another couple $100. That's why we are what we are. And
Right.
the benefit is priced the way it is.
Well, how can we mistrust the doc? Huh? We all know that Aflac doc is like part of our, it's part of our story, right?
Right.
So how can we mistrust it? I mean, I've worked with Aflac, so I can attest to the fact that you guys are easy to work with and legit. And for those of you who are watching, and if you guys want more information, I have in the comments earlier, I had tagged Tom. So feel free to reach out to him, follow him, and he can direct you to, wherever you need to go. But Tom, before we go, do you have any closing words for us? For the person who is watching, who is considering, they haven't been diagnosed, or they may be 5 years, free, but their employer does not offer this plan, or maybe they're an entrepreneur themselves and they may only have 2 or 3 people working in their company. What would you suggest?
Well, for the employer, what we try to make sure that they're clear is, if your employee is facing a diagnosis like this, you don't want them to think about anything other than getting well. Mm-hmm. Because you want to know that they are financially secure between the insurance you provide and then the supplemental that fills the gaps. Now you can have that employee focus completely on getting well and getting back to work. From an individual, we all believe we're bulletproof until we're not.
Right.
And you don't want to find out that you should have done something when you start facing this. This gentleman that I met a couple of weeks ago, he was 65 years old. He thought, okay, I'm clear. I've made it this far. Mm-hmm. But sure enough, 6 months ago, he's diagnosed with lung cancer. It can happen to anybody at any age. And you don't want to wait too late to realize, wow, that would have been a very smart investment. So we're just trying to be prudent, anticipate the worst, live for the best, and just consider this as something, or at least as a supplemental, can make a big difference in your life.
Well, Tom, we're going to end it there. You have been a wealth of information for us. So definitely, we have to consider what you're saying. And hopefully, as people watch this and as they watch the replay, they'll reach out to you, or to maybe they've considered Aflac before, or have seen or the doc on television, but never really given it much thought. But maybe now they'll be more curious, because as we say, the statistics are not on our side. It's 1 in every 3, and like you said, it's really 50%, because the one who has it, it affects the entire family. So wonderful information, great benefits. We thank you for the work that you're doing. Thank you for reaching out. LinkedIn does work, friends. I've known Tom for 4 years. I've known him on LinkedIn for 4 years, but I'm so glad you could be here today. And I look forward to working with you and your team on some other stuff, as we talked about before the show.
Well, thank you so much for the opportunity to speak to you today.
Absolutely. All right, folks, we're going to leave it here. If you have questions, you can also continue to comment in the comment box. Tom will look at it and see. Tag him if you have a question, or just follow him, which is easier. And Peter says, great talk today. Thank you, Tom. And thank you, Peter. Peter's one of my faithful watchers. So thank you, Peter. All right, guys, take care.